to the Call the Huddle podcast, the MVP Fantasy Football podcast. My name is Ichena.
And I'm Che. Each episode we break down what you need to know for fantasy football to help you think strategically for your fantasy weekly lineups decisions.
This week we'll be looking to week 9 matchups, however with a slight twist we'll to move into. In our feature segment, we'll be looking to fantasy trades, how to initiate and get the best value for your players. Without further ado, let's get started. As mentioned in the early introduction, we're going to do a start of the week. It's slightly different. We're going to kind of go into each start of the week. We're going to go into a 2-minute drill where we kind of outline each point. Most importantly, we let you decide. So, without further ado, let's get to our first start of the week. Okay, so our first start of the week is going to be quarterbacks. First, we're going to start with my personal start of the week, a guy which has been notorious this season. I believe he's not been doing particularly well. However, what we do know is a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback, and that is Aaron Rodgers. What we do know this season is that he's not particularly done well this season. He's 26th in pass attempts this year, specifically because that can't be attributed to him, but more the front office. But again, it falls onto him as the quarterback. What do we know this week? Aaron Rodgers invariably could double the number of quarterback QB1 performances this week when he takes on the Detroit Lions. First and foremost, his passing efficiency numbers in each week are something that can be a little bit frustrating. However, this week, he'll face the Detroit Lions, who are first in yards attempts, 7th in passing range touchdown, and actually bottom 4 in passes yards per game, as well as explosive pass rates allowed. So, in my mind, that just means bombs away. And for good measure as well, they are 31st out of 32 teams in the National Football League against quarterbacks this season for fantasy. They give an average of 40 points per game. If there's any chance for a get-right game, it's going to be today. So it's going to be in week 9, and that's going to be against the Detroit Lions for Aaron Rodgers. Che, what have you got?
Well, I personally think that Aaron Rodgers, the Detroit Lions are going to mollywop Aaron Rodgers. And somehow he's still going to probably come out with a win, because we all know the Detroit Lions, they are literally a 45-48 team in terms of points that they allow in a game. Every game is a shootout with them. But I think that with Aaron Rodgers, I just want to ask, is Allen Lazard playing? Because I thought he was doubtful for this game, if not out for this game. Is he playing?
Yeah, he's trending towards playing. But again, obviously, before the game tomorrow, we'll kind of get more word. But he's trending towards playing. If he doesn't, then obviously that's going to be a way of Romeo Dobbs getting most of the passing work and Robert Tonyan. So I don't think that's going to be too much of a kind of a miss, because there are pass catchers there. And obviously you've got Aaron Jones and you've got A.J. Dillon, who they use on a continuous basis. So I think, again, against the Detroit Lions, who are once again against running backs, who are 29th against running backs, 27th against tight ends, it is definitely going to be bombs away for Aaron Rodgers.
Fair enough. Time. Yeah, well, let's look at my quarterback of the week. Now, my quarterback for the week, as a counter, I looked at Aaron Rodgers, and I've got to say, Uchenna, I get what you're saying, but I always deduct points in my metrics, or in my evaluation metrics, because he's playing a division rival, and I think division rivalry games are going to be tight, are always tight, or typically tight. And with Rodgers, I think that the Lions have something up their sleeve this week as far as Aiden Hutchinson and what I think that they're going to do now, as they've never been a better opportunity to face an Aaron Rodgers with the depleting offensive weapons he has at the wide receiver position. Now, my quarterback is Patrick Mahomes. Why Patrick Mahomes? With random metrics, and honorable mention is Josh Allen. He struck out in terms of my metrics, and he scored the most points as far as metric points, looking at his rankings in PPR, looking at the matchups that he's having this week, looking at the fact that he's divisional, he's floor to ceiling, evaluated all these things, and I still went with, it was splitting hairs, but I went with Patrick Mahomes. Why did I go with Patrick Mahomes? Well, because the biggest reason was because Josh Allen's facing a division rival, and I think Robert Salah and the Jets have something up their sleeve as far as how to package defenses that will actually cause Josh Allen a lot of trouble. I think the Bills are a bully team. But back to Patrick Mahomes. Why Patrick Mahomes? Well, the Titans are set up for him to actually throw, because if Derrick Henry has a big game, Patrick Mahomes has to throw. Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't playing very well at the moment. I think that they're focusing more on the pass game. They've got doubled down on their pass game by getting Kadarius Toney in the trading block. And so for that reason, I would say that Patrick Mahomes, who has the 5th passing rating under pressure in the league of quarterbacks, was going to actually be under a lot of pressure to pass the ball, because I think that the Tennessee Titans aren't going to allow the run, albeit Derrick Henry could go off like he did the last time they faced each other last season, where it was a blowout win and he got 86 yards, 1 passing touchdown as well, and it was an A.J. Brown day. Either way, Patrick Mahomes has a floor-to-ceiling ratio of 17.1 as a floor and 35 as a ceiling. So he's going to do well tomorrow. And I think the Titans' defense is going to be brought down to earth with Indy, and also the game that they had in week 8 as well, their last game, where they had big, massive points in terms of their defensive output. They're going to be brought back down to earth by this Kansas City new look offense. Pause. Luciano, do you have a counter to that?
Absolutely. I mean, as much as the great Patrick Mahomes is going to do wonders against Tennessee, I believe they're 29th against quarterbacks. Tennessee are not that bad at defense. They're actually 10th against wide receivers, 11th against tight ends. As much as obviously that's a stat whereby Patrick Mahomes kind of eats these kind of defenses for breakfast, I can't fathom a situation where he's going to have a better day than Aaron Rodgers. And as mentioned, Aaron Rodgers is going to go up against a team who give up points, fantasy points for fun. I think we saw last week against Miami, Tua, where this looked like the great Dan Marino last week. Literally throwing touchdowns up the touchdowns. I mean, this Lions team give up points like it's no tomorrow. So I fully expect, although, as you mentioned before, it is a divisional game, so anything can happen. But for the most part, Aaron Rodgers has owned the Detroit Lions. And if there's any chance for a get-right game, I mean, that's it. As much as Tennessee have problems defensively, and they're doing all right this year, I just think you can still get pressure on Patrick Mahomes. I mean, against the Pitts, he's done well, but again...
But he's 5th under pressure. He's fifth in dealing with pressure of all quarterbacks.
100%. But again, the San Francisco 49ers were still able to sack him on a number of occasions. The Bucs were still able to sack him on 3 occasions, as much as they're both having problems on their own line. So again, you can still get to him. I just don't see him having a better matchup than Detroit.
Arrowhead?
Absolutely, but I raise you Arrowhead. I see your Arrowhead, sorry, and I raise you Detroit at home, who once again, as mentioned, made Tua Tagovailoa made it look like Dan Marino. He got these 30 fantasy points. That's ridiculous. And Tua, we all know Tua is not necessarily a guy who goes for the deep ball. He threw it in the slot maybe 15, 16 times. That's what they allow. And if you're going to throw you're going to allow Aaron Rodgers to throw the slot 15, 16 times to Aaron Jones or to A.J. Dillon, he's absolutely going to kill you. Oh, and if you want to throw over the top, your best cornerback, Jake Cordoba, he's actually injured for this game. So therefore, there's even more incentive to kind of go bombs away with this offense. I genuinely think he's going to be, I could possibly say, I think they're going to score at least 35 points in the Lions. It's going to be an absolute blowout for me.
Well, I see Kansas City, and I see that if they have any semblance of a run game, there's a reason why this Tennessee Titans defense overall is ranked where they're ranked, and that is they're ranked 25th overall. If the run game gets going with either Isaiah Pacheco and or Clyde Edwards-Helaire, where they can get something of the semblance of about 80 yards, Even they don't even need to get 100 yards just to keep the defense honest. I think that this is going to be a blowout win for the Chiefs. I see Patrick Mahomes getting 35 points easy. Kadarius Toney, Juju Smith, Clyde Edward-Helaire with a punching touchdown, or Pacheco, as well as the main man Swaggy, Travis Kelce getting a tight end and a buck 50 yards. So yeah, let's see. It's going to be a great game.
Definitely. Now we go to our second start of the week. Now we go to the wide receiver position which is kind of going to make or break your week in fantasy, especially this season. I'm going to give you my start of the week, and that is the Los Angeles Chargers' Josh Palmer. All we know going into this game that both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen are unlikely to play. Donald Palmer is also unlikely to play. So what does that mean? It means Josh Palmer and Gerald Everett, the likely two best pass catchers for the Chargers. Now, what does that mean for fantasy football in this game? And who are they up against? Well, they're up against the 32nd of the worst defense against wide receivers this season in the Atlanta Falcons, who managed to give up a total of 45 points in total between wide receivers last week to the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers, mind you, are without their best player, Christian McCaffrey, and obviously has pass catchers like DJ Moore, and as well as Terrence Marshall. But they still managed to give up a boatload of points. And what does that mean in terms of Josh Palmer? In the previous time where both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams were out, he managed to get himself a target share of almost 15% or 16% last time, and that on 50% targets. So what does that mean for Palmer this week? Well, the Falcons tend to use the zone-heavy system predominantly in defense. Now, Palmer has seen success in that system on 58.93% in the zone. So that means he's going to have an absolute feasting day. Oh, and just to remember, AJ Terrell isn't playing this week, their best cornerback. So he should see a lot of these great targets over and above, especially in the secondary. That gives him a number of opportunities to kind of get touchdowns and get points. And who have they got a quarterback? Yes, Justin Herbert, the guy who ranks first in air yards. So again, that makes Josh Palmer an absolute smash play this week. He has to start. There's no better matchup for wide receivers in this season. I just think he's got to start. Che?
Yeah, I don't know about this Chargers offense. I can see them having a dud. The only guy that's the most certain is Austin Eckler, in my opinion. I just think that I look at their wide receiver position, and I think that is Keenan Allen playing?
He's not likely to play. No, he's not going to play. No.
He's not going to play. Okay, fine, fair enough. Now, Joshua Palmer, don't get me wrong, he's going to get the targets, but I find that other than Keenan Allen, none of these are number ones. And the reason why I think that plays a part is that number ones tend to demand the ball. Number twos tend to want the ball, but want the ball in their own terms and want the shine. They're great ruggeds, but they don't really show for it when they're given a chance to. Like you see a Justin Jefferson in Minnesota with Adam Thielen. We always knew he was a number one, right? However, when he was a number two, he got the ball, and you could see that he ran his route patterns, he got his separation, and his performances demanded the ball. Whereas a true number two tends not to shine when the number one is down. They tend to shine when the number one is there to take the pressure off. This is why someone like a T. Higgins is a absolute number one wide receiver. And so for that reason, I don't know if Joshua Palmer, I think that the Chargers should go through Austin Eckler and probably will go through Austin Eckler. I don't know. I think that the Panthers, sorry, not the Panthers, the Falcons who they're facing, they're not a good team, but I think that they're the party poopers, and they're facing them in that dome as well. So anything is possible. But yeah.
Absolutely. It is a sport, sorry. I'd agree with you. If it was the NBA, if this was in our football, English football, I'd agree with you. But the NFL has the mantra of next man up, and Josh Palmer epitomizes that in this offense. He will be the number one guy. Everybody knows it. He knows it. His stats are immeasurable. He's a guy who is in excess of 6'2". He can take a load on this offense, and he's got a quarterback that's going to allow him to. And I agree with you. In any other position, in any other season. However, this season we saw that primarily in the running back position, the Deion Jackson, when Jonathan Taylor was out. He came in a plus matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I believe it was week 5, and he came in as a handcuff previously. Came in and did really, really well in terms of getting 26 fantasy points. Now, we're not saying Josh Palmer's going to might not even get that much, but for him to get a sustainable kind of 15 to 18 points, he only needs 5 to 6 targets, and that is something that he could do tomorrow against the Falcons. As I said before, the Falcons are last against wide receivers. They are there for the taking. And Josh Palmer is going to have an absolutely smash plus day. And I just think he will epitomise the mantra of next man up. So it should be good.
Yeah, it should be good. It should be good. Right. So that's past the 2-minute mark. Obviously, you've given your initial spiel. We've talked about it. Now we're going to look at this is what I think, who I think is going to be your must start for this week, week 9, Tyler Boyd of the Cincinnati Bengals. He has got a great matchup. He's got an absolutely great matchup against the Panthers. And they're at home, the Bengals are, and there's no Jamar Chase. Now, what does that mean? Well, I personally believe the numbers point to, I think Baldy even agrees with me. Well, not Baldy, sorry. That's what I'll take a bit later. Pause.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Now, we've gone through Uchenna's picks. Now we're going to look at my picks, or my must start for this week, and that is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd has a great matchup this week against the Carolina Panthers. He has got a great matchup. However, there's a caveat to it. There's no Jamar Chase, so the Cincinnati Bengals have a choice to split Tyler Boyd out wide or keep him in a slot where he primarily operates as the primary slot receiver against the nickel corner, who is Miles Hartsfield. Now, in the slot, the Panthers are actually 29th against the slot receiver. And so this new player in his sophomore year, Miles Hartsfield, has given up a lot of points and actually is part of this slot defense or nickel defense, which the Panthers line up with. That is the 29th ranked. So Tyler Boyd will feast if the Cincinnati Bengals do not split him out wide. I predict that they don't split him out wide, but keep him in the slot where he primarily operates, and elevate Mike Thomas, their wideout, to the left wide receiver position in place of the injured Jamar Chase. I think if Tyler Boyd goes to the left wide receiver position, he faces J.C. Horn, who's a first-round draft pick at right cornerback, and he is absolutely immense. 2 interceptions this season, and he's a former wide receiver, an absolute ball hawk of the Trayvon Diggs ilk. And he's a 4.4 runner as well, so he's quick. He's a similar height to Boyd, albeit he's about 6 foot-ish, 6'1", whilst Boyd is at 6'2". So, he's not losing much in height, but whatever he's losing in height, J.C. Horn, he's making in speed. So I wouldn't advise lining him up out wide against their strongest cornerback, who would have been the one marking Jamar Chase or covering Jamar Chase. So your thoughts, Uchenna?
Absolutely. I mean, they'll make very good points. Tyler Boyd is a 5 wide receiver. He's definitely taken the slack this season as unfortunately Jamar Chase has got injured. However, having looked through this before the show, I kind of looked through, did the research, I managed to kind of compare, contrast both Josh Palmer and Tyler Boyd. Now, for the fact that Tyler Boyd has played 3 more games, you've got to remember Josh Palmer's not played since week 5. So all of that work that Tyler Boyd has had in targets, Yeah, he's only three higher with 43 targets, Paul Palmer with 40. In terms of red zone targets, Palmer excels that in terms of 6 red zone targets, Tyler Boyd with 4. And lastly, in receptions, Tyler Boyd has 32 and Josh Palmer has 26. Again, in 3 less games. In that instance, again, you still got the quarterback in terms of what's his name?
Justin Herbert. So you can repeat that sentence again when you're ready.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, cool. So you've got the quarterback in Joe Burrow, who, yes, he's throwing you the ball. However, not necessarily trusting as much as you think he would, given Jamar Chase is gone. If you look at Josh Palmer, he has the trust of his quarterback in Herbert. He has the trust of him in the red zone. He has the trust in the receptions. And it's only for him. It's only because of the likes of Keenan Allen and Williams who are in the way. Again, as I said before, this is a great matchup for wide receivers. I just think Tyler Boyd will be. I just think T. Higgins is what his teammate will be the best receiver this week. That's why I've gone with Josh Palmer for my start of the week. Not just Tyler Boyd is a really good wide receiver, and in any other offense will be number 1. I just think T. Higgins is going to have an absolutely great day, and it beats
Joshua Palmer.
So yeah, Josh Palmer is going to have a great day. However, T. Higgins for Cincinnati might take more of the work from Tyler Boyd. So yeah,
you think so? Even though he'll be double covered, because you could double cover him for the entire game. All the safety help's going to rotate towards him, which means that everything underneath could be scooped up by Boyd, especially if he's facing their weakest cornerback in their nickel corner, who's really, really bad in the slot against a veteran.
Could do. However, if you're a defensive coordinator, you'd be looking at your linebacker and you'd be saying, okay, cool. If we know he's going to get the balls to the start, and we know Tyler Boyd is good, but he's not necessarily a 4-3 guy, you can't get to him.
But he's still a receiver, though. Do you fancy? If I'm a quarterback, I see a receiver against a linebacker or a tight end against a linebacker. I'm going to that receiver all day long because they're more nimble. They can break out of their routes. The linebacker can't cover them. The linebacker's basically got to keep that wide receiver in front of him at all times. But what the wide receiver's going to do is he's going to audible his routes just to get behind him. And once he's gotten behind him, it's over. It's absolutely over. So, I mean, audience, listeners, you decide. Write in the comments below. Type what you think in the comments below, because I think Tyler Boyd is an absolute nailed-on must-start this week.
Absolutely. Definitely let us know, especially on Twitter at called_huddle. Let us know the situation and let us know who you believe should be your wide receiver start of the week. Now we go into our start of the week at the running back position. And I'm going to go with a guy who was acquired in the offseason by his coach, Mike McDaniels, and that's going to be Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert, again, he's had a lot of injury problems going back to his days on the 49ers. He hasn't been able to kind of stay injury-free for the last 2 years. What we do know is this is a guy who has excelled this season in Miami and been able to kind of get a lot of fantasy points. So this week he's facing Chicago Bears. Basically, they are the third best matchup against running backs. Mostert himself actually scored the 17th most fantasy points for running backs over this last 4 weeks. Chicago themselves have allowed the 4th most fantasy points to running backs per game this week. Now, anyone worried about Jeff Wilson coming back into the squad? Yes, there's justification to be worried. However, this week will not be the week to be worried. As he's just been traded, he will likely be eased into the offense rather than being the lead back. That's where Raheem Mostert will be, the lead back this week. And for just to clarify, just to cap that off, the Dolphins will likely be the clear favourites. Therefore, keeping back. Let me start again. Ready?
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And just finally, the Dolphins are clear favourites, which means they should keep the ball in situations, and so which means they can run the ball. So therefore, Raheem Mostert should have actually smashed across the game. Shane?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same thing. I think that Raheem Mostert's going to have a beast of a game. I think I always look at the stats for the Chicago Bears in my research. I looked at the stats and I just saw they've lost Roquan Smith, and I think that they're about to, if they haven't already lost Robert Quinn.
Yes.
So they're losing a lot of pieces in that defensive front. And I think that's going to play a big part in terms of their future defensive statistics moving forward. And I think that they're going to be a lot more porous, both in passing and in running, than we realize, or that their stats show. I think their stats are actually flattered to deceive, and a bit of a fool's gold, really, in that they've lost key pieces and leaders on that defensive front. So, yeah, I think I actually agree with you. Raheem Mostert's going to have a beast of a week.
Absolutely. I mean, just to cap off, Chicago are 31st in rush yards per game, 25th in EPA per rush. So EPA is basically XG, or expected points. So expected points per average. They're 25th. So even before the game's kicked off, they're expected to relinquish the 25th most rushing points per game. So that just shows you how bad their run defense is and how good it should be for Raheem Mostert. So absolutely start him this week. Yes, Jerry Nichols will get his touches, but Raheem Mostert has kind of solidified that position as the RB1 for the Miami Dolphins. Shane, who have you got?
I've got my main man, Playoff Lenny. Now, he's had not so great weeks the last few weeks. He had, I think, almost 100, or if not just over 100 all-purpose yards last week against the Baltimore Ravens. However, this week he's going up against 28th ranked run defense in the Rams. And the thing is, with Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd and Co. and Jalen Ramsey, I think that Tom Brady's going to try and establish that run very, very early and keep at a steady pace and dink and dunk and probe because he would want to not be taking hits and licks off of Aaron Donald, number 99. So what's funny is that when I was doing my research or in preparation of all of this, I saw Leonard Fournette and I looked at his stats on receiving yards or receiving targets, and he is actually top 3 in receiving targets for running back. So again, as I mentioned before, he tends to get more all-purpose yards and he gets a lot more receptions than one would realize. So he's been incorporated very heavily in this offense, especially with the wide receiver position being very, very depleted due to injury. Chris Godwin, you don't know when he's ever going to be healthy or whether he's going to be there or not. It's always a game-time decision. Julio Jones is the same. He's in the twilight of his career. And AD and the Rams are just not as good against the run. They suck, actually. They're 27th against the run. And in the last outing that he had, that infamous Cooper bleeping Kupp, as Skip Bayless says, game in the playoffs last season, Leonard Fournette got 24 yards, 1 touchdown. 24 yards and 1 touchdown. 3 receptions for 34 yards. I beg your pardon, that was in his last outing against the Ravens. Got 24 yards, 1 touchdown, and 3 receptions for 34 yards. But when you look at his statistics, he hasn't got any 20, 30, 40, or 50 plus yards, i.e. big plays. He's gotten 10-yard plays this season. So really, he's a move the chain sort of guy, or he's been getting move the chain sort of action for that offense or in that offense. So he's quite a steady Eddie in that offense. So look to him to do that. I mean, again, going back to that infamous Cooper bleeping Kupp game against the Rams last season, he got 51 yards, rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 56 yards off of receiving. So yeah, he got 107 all-purpose yards, which is a lot of points. So I think that Leonard Fournette is a 30. And what do you think about that, Jenna?
Yes, I mean, as much as I like Leonard Fournette, as much as I respect his player for this record, and he's actually got a Super Bowl, I do respect that. However, I just think this week, the Sturt has the better matchup. I mean, looking through it, the Rams, for all their defensive problems, are second against running backs. And this season, it's not been a very vintage season for Fournette. The fact he's only rushing 3.4 yards per carry, as opposed to Mostert, who's rushing 4.5 yards per carry. It even goes to an extent where he's actually rushing yards slightly more for Mostert this year. Mostert has 452 rushing yards over 8 games. Leonard Fournette, in a better offense, you can say, has 386. Again, to me, that all points to Mostert having an absolute smash plus there. As much as Fournette is a good running back, and your points are valid, I think that to alleviate the pressure on Brady, he's going to throw dunk offs to his running backs. But again, I don't think Fournette is a particularly good pass catcher. And I think someone like a Rashad White, the rookie that they picked up in this year's draft, is more likely to have those touches rather than Fournette. If that's the case, then it makes Fournette slightly less better start this week. And Mostert, again, a guy who's going to get the majority of the touches in the backfield against the team against Chicago, as you mentioned, who's seemingly given up on the defensive side of the ball. I just think it's going to be one heck of a day for Mostert. And if you're looking for an RB1 performance this week, I would have gone on 11 and say he's going to be the RB1 this week, Raheem Mostert.
Interesting. It's interesting that you said that. You said that they were the second ranked passing defense, because according to my statistics, they were one of the worst. So that's as per ESPN stats.
Not the passing, sorry, the rushing defense.
Sorry, the Russian. Yeah, they were one of the worst. So yeah, I mean, look, guys, look it up. Guys in the chat, look it up. Tell us what you think, because this is the problem with a lot of statistics that we see out there. You have to make these informed decisions. You have to evaluate what you know and all the different sources. You cite the sources and come to your conclusion. If Chen has come to his, I've come to mine. We're going to have to agree to disagree. Embrace that debate, baby. That's what this is all about. He goes with Mostert, I go with Leonard Fournette. You decide.
Absolutely. With that decision making, we go to our fourth and final start of the week. And that's going to be the tight ends. So for myself, I'm going to go with Evan Ingram. But he's played it simple. Evan Ingram's had a pretty good last couple of weeks. In the last couple of weeks, up against the Giants a few weeks ago, and then up against Denver last week, and he's managed to get himself a touchdown in both games. Now, Evan Ingram is something of a beast in terms of size. He stands at nearly 6'2", 6'3", and coming out of the draft, he was something of a specimen. Now, he seemingly carried that over into the NFL, but not necessarily for the Giants, who kind of exasperated by his injury record. But what he has done for Jacksonville is something quite special. I mean, having looked him up this year with a bit of research, he's actually got 45 targets in 8 games. That ranks third amongst tight ends. He actually has 32 receptions for those 45 targets. Again, that ranks in the top 10 for tight ends. And finally, red zone targets. In the games that he's kind of been able to start this year, he managed to get 3 red zone targets. Now, who's he up against? The Raiders, who are, let's have it for you, 30th against tight ends. They managed last week to make someone like Taysom Hill, who we might talk about later on, a guy, they managed to turn him into a stud tight end last week, as he managed to raid them again last week against the Saints. The Raiders are there for the taking. The secondary is poor, the defense is not necessarily great, and they can be got at. What do you think about that, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, Evan Ingram, don't get me started. I'm a New York Giants homer. As guys who've been listening, you can listen to our archives to know. And Evan Ingram is one of the most frustrating players I've ever had, both on my fantasy team and on my New York Football Giants. And so, because of that, it's interesting you talk about the amount of targets he gets. For some reason, he does everything right but catch the damn ball, because he seems to get all the targets, and every projection of his targets shows that he should be getting, like, I don't know, prime George Kittle stroke, Darren Waller sort of numbers, but he doesn't. I look at his floor, and his floor is about 2.6 PPR points. His ceiling is 15.5, and that's an absolute great game for him as far as his offensive output. Now with him, yes, he's got the Raiders this week, but I look at him and I say to myself, I just don't trust him. I just don't trust him. I don't trust Trevor Lawrence. And I just look at him and I think that there's better out there at the tight end position. I mean, if I really wanted to, I mean, with an honourable mention, I would have gone for the usual Travis Kelce's, all of that, Mark Andrews, even Zach Ertz. However, and even Hawkinson, considering that he's just moved to the Minnesota Vikings. However, I don't think that he's the guy. My guy is the guy. But yeah, Uchenna, I don't know what you think about what I just said, but
absolutely, no, you make some valid points. Definitely someone that's been very frustrating, especially as a transfer. I appreciate that. However, I can't go past the fact that Vegas, that's what Vegas Raiders are 13th in receiving yards per game and third in receiving touchdowns allowed to tight ends. Firstly, the 30th, and they're one of the worst against tight ends. I just think Evan Ingram could fall into the end zone with Lawrence throwing the ball, and I just think it's just there for him.
Yeah, but only 3 targets though.
But yeah,
that's a bit worrying for a tight end, considering you're the primary tight end with just Christian Kirk there as your other option at receiver, as far as like your main competitor in your own team. 3 targets for a tight end, a big big body tight end, as you mentioned.
Absolutely, definitely. I think you look at kind of Jacksonville's games, they're trying to establish the run, whether it be Etienne or Robinson previously. If you manage to look at Jacksonville previously, they're trying to really establish the run, whether it be from Etienne, whether it be through Robinson previously. The majority of their games, when they were trying to establish the run, trying to get the wide receivers ready. I think it's not just Christian Kirk, it's Zay Jones, it's Marvin Jones as well. So he wasn't necessarily getting robbed the green, but in the semi before, quite recently, he's been getting that, whether it be against the Giants, whether it be against Denver last week. He could have had 2 touchdowns against Denver. The Denver defense, who are, again, pretty stingy to any pass catcher. He was able to find himself in the end zone, managed to get 5-6 targets. He get himself 15 fantasy points. So if he was able to do that against Patrick Surtain and co, he's definitely going to be able to do that against the Raiders, whose secondary, again, ranks third from bottom, second from bottom for tight end. So, yeah, that's someone that's definitely going to be a start. Who did you want to start this week, Che?
Well, I wanted to start a player that really grinds my gears, but again, I'm an objective dude, and all my numbers point to Taysom Hill having a monster game. And like I said earlier, Baldy agrees with me. And the fact of the matter is, when you look at Taysom Hill, you look at the fact that he's all things but a tight end, even though he's listed as a tight end. And all my metrics shouts and screams to go with Taysom Hill. I mean, he's facing the Baltimore Ravens, who are 31st against the slot. They're also 28th against the run. So really, Taysom Hill's set up for an all-purpose yard monster game, both passing and rushing. Sorry, not passing, both catching and rushing, because Baltimore Ravens are 26th against the pass, and I think that they're going to use Taysom Hill as both a tight end and as a tight end in the passing game, and a rusher on the center, and or as a running back, essentially as a pseudo running back. But as a tight end, he's going to be a massive red zone threat. Him and Alvin Kamara are going to be the red zone threats, either to punch it in or to put a big body in there where he'll be facing a nickel corner for the Ravens, which will be Damarian Williams, 5'10", 4.5 speed, 182 pounds, versus Taysom Hill, who's a big boy, 230 at about 6'2", and he's actually got 4.4 speed. So he's a big body. He's a bruiser of a player, and I think that he's a physical specimen as well, and that's why they use him as their utility player, their go-go gadget player. And I think that Taysom Hill has a monster of a game, and I'm looking at anywhere between 30 to about 35 points this week. How about you?
Big statement. I think this is the rare occasion where we both agree with each other. I think Taysom Hill, look at the metrics, look at the people that are available in the secondary for the Ravens. it just means that Taysom Hill's going to have an absolutely massive day. There's no player within the secondary who's going to match up well with Taysom Hill, what he could bring, both on the ground and even running, or even throwing the ball. But especially on the ground, there's no one that's going to be able to match up well with him. This is a secondary who are 17th against tight ends. Not particularly great, but again, Taysom Hill is ridiculous. It's insane. So he's not going to be a tight end. He's mostly going to be a running back. And then with regards to running backs, the Ravens are 25th against running backs. So it will lead to him having an absolutely great day. Maybe not 35 points, but definitely in the range of 20 points. He's going to get a touchdown. So he might even get 2 touchdowns. So yeah, I think he's going to have a great day.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a 1-2 punch with Taysom Hill. I think that also the biggest issue as well, and why I think he's going to get monster yards both in the passing game as well, and why I think he will get over 30 points, is because Chris Olave is going to be lined up against Marlon Humphrey. Now that's going to be the biggest acid test, in my opinion, of his career in terms of matchups. And I don't know if he's going to. I think that at very best he's going to split his success rate against the Marlon Humphrey, who's a very wily vet at the cornerback position. And because he'll be gobbled up potentially, or he'll have a lot of attention or high profile attention, so to speak, I think that Taysom Hill can sneak in there and just keep vulturing all of either Alvin Kamara's touchdowns and or his own touchdowns through design plays for him in the passing game, him being Taysom Hill. So let's see. But I can't wait. And let's see what the games bring.
We got out of that state. Let's go to our next segment where we talk about trades. So this week's feature topic is going to be something quite pretty near and dear to most of the fantasy players' hearts, especially if you're in a league that consists of people that not necessarily family members, but different people from different walks of life. At least trades. Trades is something that make in a good league makes the league really good, makes it enjoyable, and it's good for me. Personally, I don't know about you, Chase. One of the most fascinating parts of playing fantasy football, negotiating trades. What we're going to talk about today is a situation whereby what we can do to initiate trades will make you better at initiating trades, and obviously helping you to gain that value back for yourself. So basically, so you know what you can get, or how to get it, or what you deserve, or what you believe you deserve for those players. So, Che, what are your thoughts on that?
I just get really annoyed. I get really annoyed and frustrated, pissed off, because I'm tired of people being really, really tight. Like, for God's sake, you don't own, like, you own the players in terms of fantasy, but like you're not gonna win the lotto. Like, if you just hold on to those tickets, like trade is called trade for a reason. You know, you got to be ready to part ways with players, and especially when you have value propositions and someone's proposing something. You need to be able to evaluate what players you have and what your needs are, and be willing to give. It's give and take, and it should be win-win. But I'm just fed up with people either not wanting to trade when they're clearly losing. I've got guys in our league that are on like 1-7 or 1-7 records right now going into week 9, not wanting to trade. And it's like, my mind, I get so confused with all of that, because it's like, I remember when I was it 2-4 about 2 seasons ago, and I was trading, like I was pitching trades every day to try and hunt for those players, because that's the only way that you could make up a headway as far as getting back to your 500 first and then to a winning record. But I don't know, man. I don't know. Some people just don't understand. A lot of fantasy owners I don't know if you find that out in your leagues. Please leave a comment in the comment section below, or at us on our Twitter page at call_huddle. To just let us know how you feel about this, because it really pissed me off. But yeah, Jenna, we were talking offline, weren't we, about certain trades? I mean, enlighten our audience. Talk to us about that. Those trades that you saw this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can hear the distress in your voice. I can hear how annoyed you are about it. To be fair, it's quite annoying. I can imagine it can be annoying for the viewers, the listeners, especially when dealing with in big leagues. I mean, there are some trades where some people might want to value a certain player too much. So let's say, for example, a player that's kind of injured at the moment, someone like maybe previously, let's say George Kittle. Just take an example. That's what we were talking about previously. George Kittle is someone that, again, at his very best, is a top 3 tight end. However, in recent times, he's not been able to kind of show those talents as frequently as he would have liked, especially for fantasy, which means his value will naturally decrease. Now, what you have is some owners who kind of still see George Kittle as that elite, fantasy relevant player. Asks you for a player, let's say, a Kelsey or an Andrews in exchange. I mean, that's the type of kind of thing we're talking about. You have to kind of, there are different circumstances when you want to acquire a player, especially negotiating. You've got to look at the circumstance. You've got to look at the injury record. You've got to look at how they play. Let's go back to the Kittle example. Kittle is mainly used as a blocker for the most part. It's only been in more recent games that he's been used in the passing game. You've got to look at the trends as well. The fact that he's been used in the passing game when Deebo Samuel has been out is also a trend. When he's back in, he's used as a blocker. So there's no way you can sit here and demand a Kelsey or an Andrews in exchange for him. So again, that's something you need to be wary of, especially when you negotiate for trades. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, and I'll add with Kittle that I think that Shanahan wants to have him in the passing game, but we also have to look at the fact that the O-line's been banged up for the 49ers earlier on this season. And Kittle's just coming back from his own injuries, muscular injuries and or other injuries in his lower half. So he's still got his strength. Shanahan uses him as an auxiliary blocker to support the O-line because he's just such an elite blocker. He's probably the best blocking tight end in the league right now. And so coincidentally, Deebo being out has led to him being forced to being a wide receiver as well, to open up the field, especially in the middle of the field, and actually be a big body target for Jimmy Garoppolo as a safety blanket, which he was in that season in 2019, where the 49ers reached the Super Bowl. So they value George Kittle as this commodity. I was using a gold analogy where gold is a commodity, but what these fantasy owners tend to do is they say, okay, we've got gold and we want to trade for oil. But what they offer us for oil is that they don't understand that oil's got more value because its value is in its utility. So whilst you might have a George Kittle and a TJ Hawkinson might not have Kittle's ceiling, because we know that Kittle's unplayable. But if we say Kittle's gold in this metaphor or in this analogy, and Hawkinson is oil, Hawkinson's going to get used more in any offense that he's in because he's that guy at tight end, and he's in his prime. Whereas Kittle is in the tail end of his prime, and he's also got all these other extenuating factors, which we've mentioned already, such as the O-line, injuries to his O-line, injuries to his wide receiving core, new parts in Christian McCaffrey coming in, etc., that are hampering his fantasy output because unfortunately blocks do not show on the stat sheet. They don't show on the stat sheet and they don't show in fantasy. They're not a metric that players get rewarded with points for. Whereas Hawkinson is purely a receiving tight end for the most part. And so because of that, the oil will be worth more than gold because of the utility factor. Whereas these people say, these fantasy owners say, but I've still got gold, and so I should get what gold was worth 20 years ago, or what Kittle was worth 3 years ago. I should still get the same value. And so they're not keeping up with the times and seeing today's valuation, which is an absolute headache and a nightmare. And it's like talking to a brick wall when you're trying to explain to these fantasy owners that cannot value to say there's no equity in the value. It's not a value exchange. It's a lose-win situation in terms of what they tend to offer, whether it be Kittle or whether they want someone like a Hawkinson and they give me someone that they picked off of the waiver wire.
Definitely, 100% agree with all your sentiments there. Now, again, the Kittle analogy is just one analogy. Could be for any player, so don't need to think that we're just targeting Kittle owners.
So bully the Kittle owners.
Exactly. So it's not that at all. It could be for anybody. However, at Call the Huddle, we're not ones to kind of just rant only. We are here to offer solutions for you to think. So, from our point of view, we're going to kind of offer you the solutions to kind of illustrate how you could trade more effectively. Now, Jay, what would you think is the initial? What could you do to kind of start trades, and what do you think to kind of help the viewers and listeners out in terms of what you could do to start and initiate trades? What's your advice? Because we both kind of been playing first fantasy football for a long while, and we've been involved in several trades. What do you think is the best way to trade, or basically how to initiate the trade?
I think at the initiation stage, Luciano, I think that we have to, first of all, is our mindset. So the fantasy owner has to think win-win. So how can I win and how can the other person win? Because ultimately, when you're offering something, the other person has to feel that he or she is not being cheated as far as the valuation. So what that means is that whoever you're proposing to swap or trade has to be someone of a similar to equal value, or what the other person might find important enough to actually want from your team should be what you're sending off as far as your negotiation, as your proposal. And so if that's not the case, then you have to be willing to haggle a bit and be open-minded. And so when you go for a trade, you have to think, how are they going to win? And how do you do that? How do you think win-win? Well, you go to their team and look at what their needs are. I tend to analyze what their needs are. Are they low in depth with running backs? Are they low in depth with quarterbacks? Are they low in depth with wide receivers? And also, so when I package my deal, I'll package, like, if they depleted at wide receiver position, or their wide receivers are injured, their primary, point go-getters, like myself with Chase, I would go after giving them a wide receiver, for example, if I wanted a running back, or if I wanted to trade for a bench player. But I'd always look at win-win. And even if I go for a bench player, then I have to look at what leverage or what advantages I have in this trading deal that will force that person, that fancy owner of that starter, to want to trade for my player. For example, if I've got Mike Davis, for example, or Chuba Hubbard, or even Dante Stevenson, right? Is it Dante Stevenson? Dante Foreman, I beg your pardon. Dante Foreman for the Carolina Panthers. He was probably the third string or second string running back, and he would be on people's benches at best in a deeper league, right? However, most people would have picked him up on the waiver wires if they were sharp enough. Unfortunately, I wasn't. But when Christian McCaffrey left, he had a lot of leverage, or owners that had him had a lot of leverage, because he would be the starter as soon as CMC left. And so because of that, that would possibly be the reason why you trade at the time Dante Stevenson, especially after his first game, for someone like, I don't know, a Joe Mixon, because you knew coming in that he was going to be the number one. And so that's where the leverage came in, where you actually had an advantage that you could pitch to that other owner to try and get some sort of equal value on, knowing that, for example, a Joe Mixon is a steady feature of that Bengals offense, and he is the lead back, so he will get the touches, he will get the carries, and he will also be able to produce. And so again, it's win-win.
Definitely, I definitely concur with everything you said right there, especially with Deontay Foreman. He's someone that was thrust into the RB1 discussion. Therefore, because of the volume, because the opportunity, he's 100% going to be in that realm of RB1, so he should be treated as such. So again, as mentioned, value and looking at each person's team is essential. But the most essential thing personally is communication. Now, I know we're both in the league with the number of participants in the 10 TP, full PPR league. And as the commissioner, I've kind of outlined the way where you've got to communicate before you trade. I think communication is absolutely key. We've kind of taken advantage of a particular format, kind of trade messaging system whereby you message before you trade. There's nothing worse than having a blind offer which is both inconsiderate and just juvenile. Yeah. And you just look at it and you think, okay, this is rubbing you up the wrong way. You delete it otherwise, but it just rubs you up the wrong way. And you're less inclined to kind of trade. But again, if you develop that communication, especially with your league mates, especially if you've been in the league together for a while, you develop that kind of a pseudo relationship in the sense that you know what that guy wants, you know how that guy is, you can communicate with that guy. I think we've got a lot of, I don't know about you, Trent, we've got a lot of people in our league who are like that, who are pretty good in that respect, in terms of they're able to communicate, they're able to trade. That means a lot more trades because I'm more comfortable with trading with you. I'm more inclined to kind of negotiate. If I want to negotiate, that means, as Trey mentioned, it's going to be a win-win for both of us. And that's ultimately what you want. There's nothing worse than having a bad taste in your mouth in terms of a trade and feeling that you've been kind of bumped, for want of a better word. But again, it's something to think about. But it's a problem in most leagues, and I think it's something we needed to kind of discuss here at Call the Huddle. And I think it's a great way of making sure it's better, makes the league better. What did you
Yeah. I mean, you said about offline, didn't you? Was it something along the lines of trade etiquette or negotiation etiquette? Please talk to us more about that, Jen.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of trading, I mean, the likelihood, especially when you do communicate, you manage to kind of message people back and forth. The likelihood is that the more inclined to kind of want and demand before you even kind of say anything. So let's say somebody wants a certain play, or you ask for their demand, or the person receiving will say what you want. But again, what I do personally, I think something that can be done is when you do wish to acquire a player, especially when you're speaking to your league mate, you kind of word it in a way whereby you obviously speaking to the person who's hi, what is this person available? And obviously finish off with that sentence. What is your price? I mean, that's two birds with one stone. You ask whether they're available, they'll say yes or no. They'll then counter that with, if he is available, they'll give the price. But it's also important for the person concerned to give you that price. Nothing worse than saying, replying with, depends on who you want, or being ambiguous. That doesn't get anywhere. There's no point in doing that. You're not going to move anywhere. It just lengthens the process even more. We can get to a situation whereby you can get a trade done within 3 to 4 messages. That's ideal. People go ahead with their day, and ultimately can go ahead with the trade. So again, it's also really good to kind of the person that is asking, has the player, to not be ambiguous. Just tell them this is who you want. If they're not available, say it. There's nothing wrong.
Yeah, there's also a no deal, isn't there? There's also a no deal as well. Like, if you can't think win-win, if both parties don't win, then there's a no deal. And the fact of the matter is that we have to use that rule of roughly 3 messages. Because really, you can sense check and see if somebody doesn't want to counter, they don't really want that trade to happen. They're not even thinking about it. They're happy with their team. So move on.
Exactly. So it's very much not here to force anybody. That's not what the point of trading is. We're here to fire
at gunpoint, yeah?
Exactly.
Shotgun trade.
This is not a situation. We're not reading out people, reading out demands at gunpoint. No. This is a situation whereby we're looking, well, for the most part, people are looking to acquire certain players and they're looking for an answer, or they're looking for a situation where something can be done, or this is for clarity. And that's what the most part should be: clear, concise communication, and therefore you get the deal done. As mentioned before, trade shouldn't be a long, drawn-out affair. I mean, you can obviously have your chat, draw the relationship, kind of build that relationship. But again, the art is, as Jay said, look at the team. It's a win-win situation. Look at the team. What do they know? Are they missing something at running back? Are they missing something? Are they at the tight end? Within the tight end position is quite scarce. Are they missing something at tight end? Could you give them something in return? Look at that before kind of making trades. Obviously, that will be good for both yourself, the person receiving the trade, and the person getting the player. So again, it's something to think about. And I think
100%.
it's it's something that make any kind of league. Well, there's nothing worse than being in a league where there's no trading happens. I've been there, I've done that. It's horrible. I left sharpishly. So yeah, it's something to think about moving forward.
Definitely.
Of course. Okay, do you want to wrap up now? Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah. Yes, please. Yeah, I'm on my last legs. I'm not gonna lie.
That's fine. Go. Don't know about you, Che, but that's been an absolutely fantastic show. Once again, we managed to outline our starts of the week, especially. I can't wait for the likes of Tyler Boyd and Taysom Hill, as well as Mostert to kind of prove us right in that regard. We've kind of talked about trading etiquette, which has also been a good kind of conclusion to the show. As mentioned earlier in the show, please let us know our feedback, whether it be likes on YouTube or feedback on Apple Music, etc. It really does help us out a lot. You can primarily get us on Twitter at call_huddle, whereby you can look us up there and kind of converse with us there, whether it be via DM or via kind of the message feature underneath. Let us know the situation. Let us know your starts of the week.
Let us know your takes. Comment below as well. Like, comment, subscribe. Comment below. Please tell us what you think. Tell us what you think about the show. Tell us any feedback. We appreciate it all. We're a growing channel. We're just new to the game, and we want to grow. We're in a race to get over 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So please help us out.
Definitely want to get there. So from me, Cheddar,
and me, Che.
See you next time.
Peace.